Hey, welcome to BreitWerks. What are you looking at? 1986 intake manifold for a 930 turbo. So what I wanted to show you is the process that we take these intake manifolds through. So small block Chevy guys have been talking about blueprinting for years, and everybody has a different definition of what blueprinting means. But what I wanted to do is show you for the rough cut, I wanted to show you just how out of tolerance the factory production parts are. Right, so we opened these up for 36 millimeter intake ports. But what's interesting is when you look at the holes, like this is a lip over here, right? Let's see if I can show you. There's a lip there, but there's no lip here, which kind of shows you the original hole was a little off center. As a matter of fact, all the way up here on number 6, you can see that the cut didn't even clean up, right? So at 36 millimeters, the factory casting was offset this direction towards the center of the motor, right? Because these holes are perfectly centered on the stud holes, the intake stud holes. So this is the rough cut, right? It goes down, what is that? Maybe a quarter of an inch, half, not quite a half. But we'll go in now and we'll hand blend these so that there won't be any steps. Right, but to get an idea of what does blueprinting actually mean, here you can see this guy is like oblong from the factory, right? Just based on the cut, the perfectly machined cut, we'll call it the blueprint cut versus what was in there, right? See how thick that side is, how thin that side is, and you have a little bit of thickness over here. Same thing up here, the hole was way offset. So when you start to talk about how efficient was the intake, it was pretty far off. I mean, here you can see that these holes are offset. So when you blueprint these engines, and sometimes the terms are port match, there's actually a lot that goes into it. It's not just, making sure that your gaskets line up, but it's actually getting all of the critical dimensions centered on what all those other standoffs would be. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we're going to blend this. And this will be a long video. We're going to clean this guy up, bead blast him, and Cerakote him. And one other operation we're going to perform is on the original blow-off valve. We pulled that pipe out, and what we're going to do is put a threaded plug in there. So that's where this guy's going. So we've got a lot of work in front of us, but the good news is we can build this whole thing out and have it so that it's ready to just lay on top of the motor once the long block is ready. So ride along with us, we'll check this out, and I'm gonna go get on with it. All right, so we've got our hand blending done. So we've got these intake runners as smooth as we can. And for those of you that are like, hey, why didn't you just run a 36 millimeter cutter all the way in? Well, you got some very, very thin, you can see the indentations here. You got some very, very thin walls that you gotta make sure of. So it's definitely not just a jam it and go. Otherwise you'll end up with a cracked intake manifold or holes or something like that. So for those of you that are going to ask about the process, this is what I'll tell you. Go buy yourself a Chevy small block head, go get an aluminum head and practice. This is not the kind of thing you learn how to do on YouTube. Many, many hours. I've been doing this type of stuff for 20 years. And I didn't do anything fancy. All I did was a hand blend, right? Nothing fancy. But the one rule of thumb that I live by that an old timer taught me, he said, don't fuck with the short side, right? Short side is where you get into black magic and you start changing velocities. Unless you have a flow bench, doing a blend, simply taking these things out. Don't start screwing with anything, just like a cylinder head, right? But Porsche proved many, many years ago that once you get up to, I think it was like 0.75 bar of boost, the casting flashing, right? So your boundary layer no longer is really that problematic. So you don't have to really get in there and polish this thing out, but you do want smooth transitions. You don't want any, sharp spikes in there anywhere. So we've got that done, and yeah, go practice on something, or call us up, send it to us, we can do it for you. But now we're gonna bead blast this guy up, get them all cleaned, and then we're going to Cerakote them. So we'll do the bead blasting process. Nothing hard about that. The hardest part is you've got a lot of little interior areas that like to grab the grit and hold on to it. So you just have to make sure that you get it all cleaned up. Oh, and in the process, we also got our plug threads done. So we'll be able to plug that up. Won't have, you know, some goofy rubber caps anywhere. So we're gonna get on with it. And yeah, this guy does not want to come off, and I don't want to play with him too much. So I think we're just gonna tape him up as we go into the blast cabinet. All right, we'll see you back once we've got her cleaned up. All right, we've blasted and masked our intake manifold. So we've got this guy all set and ready to go into our little paint booth. And we are going to spray some Cerakote and see how that comes out. All right, we're gonna get on with it and we'll show you the finished product. So we're in our top secret paint booth here. We're also going to do the intake injector blocks. So these guys are going to get Cerakoted also. So we're going to get these guys all done up, and we'll have some nice matching parts. All right, we got this little lady all painted up. So that Glacier Black does a nice job on the magnesium. So we also got our injector blocks painted up. So we are going to unmask this guy and start to build him out a little bit. But yeah, I like the finish. Came out pretty well. All right, we're gonna get on with it. So we got our intake back together with the CIS system bolted on top of it. As we get closer, we'll change out all the rubber fuel lines. But this system ran really, really well. So other than opening up the ports, there really was no reason to take it apart. But because we opened up the ports, we did that. So now we got our 36mm ports. And then once we get it on the engine and we can get all the correct routing and correct distances and stuff, we'll replace some of the vacuum hoses. But hey, now we can store it safe and sound and know that once we get the long block assembled, we can pop this guy on there and finish our work. Hey, thanks for watching, and hopefully this was interesting. A lot of work to just take this guy out to 36mm ports, but I can guarantee you that the butt dyno is gonna appreciate it. So have a fantastic day. Check us out at BreitWerks.com, and if you like these kind of videos, hit that subscribe button.